Jake Morrison's head pounded like someone was hitting it with a hammer. His mouth tasted like metal and dirt. When he tried to open his eyes, bright lights made them water. Everything hurt. His back, his arms, his legs. Even breathing was painful. He was lying on a cold metal floor. The air smelled wrong, not like earth air. It had a sharp, bitter smell that made his nose burn. Jake tried to remember what happened. He was on the transport ship heading to New Denver Colony. Then there were alarms, red lights flashing everywhere. Captain Rodriguez shouting orders. Then nothing. Jake pushed himself up slowly. His Marine training kicked in automatically. Check for injuries first. His body was sore, but nothing felt broken. Good. Check the area next. He was in a small room with metal walls. No windows. One door with no handle on his side, a prison cell. You're awake. The voice came from behind him. Jake spun around and immediately wished he hadn't. His head spun with dizziness. Standing in the corner was something that definitely wasn't human. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, with dark green skin that looked like leather. Its head was long and narrow with yellow eyes that had no white parts. When it spoke, Jake could see rows of sharp teeth. "What are you?" Jake asked. His voice came out as a croak. "I am HFY of the Saurian people." "You are human, yes? Small and weak-looking, even for your kind." Jake looked around the cell again. It was bigger than he first thought. There were other creatures here, too. In one corner sat something that looked like it was made of purple crystal. Its body sparkled when the light hit it. Near the door was a creature covered in brown fur with 6 arms and red eyes. "Where are we?" Jake asked. "On a Vorthak slave ship," HFY answered. "They took us from different planets. Now we belong to them." "Belong to them?" "I don't belong to anyone." HFY made a sound that might have been laughter. "Tell that to our new masters. They will find it amusing before they kill you." The crystal creature spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "The human does not understand yet. The Vorthak take strong fighters from many worlds. They make us fight each other for sport. The winners live to fight again. The losers die." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Gladiators." "Yes," said the furry creature. "I am Quillen. I have been here for 2 cycles of their moon. I have won 4 fights, but each one gets harder." "How many have you seen die?" Jake asked. Quillen's red eyes looked sad. "Too many to count. The Vorthak love to watch death. They bet on who will win. They cheer when blood flows." Jake stood up and walked to the door. It was solid metal with no way to open it from inside. He pushed against it anyway. It didn't move at all. "I tried that too," HFY said. "These walls are made from their strongest metal. Even my claws cannot scratch them. There has to be a way out. The only way out is to win enough fights to earn freedom," said the crystal being. "But no one has ever won that many fights. The Vorthak make sure of it." Before Jake could ask more questions, the door opened with a loud hiss. 3 creatures walked in. They looked similar to HFY but bigger and meaner. Their skin was darker, and they wore black armor. One of them had scars covering half his face. "New meat, wake up," the scarred one said in heavily accented English. "I am Commander Thexvor. You belong to me now." Jake stood as straight as he could. His Marine training taught him never to show fear even when he felt it. "I'm Jake Morrison, Corporal, Earth Defense Marines. I demand to speak to whoever is in charge." All 3 aliens started laughing. It was an ugly sound, like metal scraping on stone. "Demand?" Thexvor stepped closer. Even though Jake was 6 feet tall, the alien towered over him. "Little pink thing. Makes demands? How cute." "The human thinks he has rights," one of the other guards said. "Should we tell him how this works?" Thexvor grabbed Jake by the shirt and lifted him off the ground with one hand. Jake was strong for a human, but the alien's strength was incredible. "Listen carefully, meat. You are property now. You will fight when we say fight. You will kill when we say kill. If you refuse, we will hurt you in ways your tiny brain cannot imagine." Jake looked directly into the alien's yellow eyes. "Go to hell." Thexvor's free hand moved faster than Jake could follow. The blow to his stomach lifted him off his feet and sent him flying across the cell. He hit the wall hard and slid to the floor, gasping for air. "That was gentle," Thexvor said. "Next time I will not be so kind." The commander turned to address all the prisoners. "Tomorrow we reach the arena station. You will all fight soon. Some of you will live, most will die. The crowds are especially hungry for new blood." He looked back at Jake, who was still trying to breathe normally. "The human will be amusing. Our fighters have never faced such a weak species. It will be over quickly." "Maybe too quickly," another guard said. "The crowd likes their entertainment. To last longer. Perhaps we should give him extra training," Thexvor said with an evil grin. "Help him survive a few extra minutes in the arena." Jake forced himself to stand up. His ribs felt like they were on fire, but he wouldn't show weakness. "I don't need your help." "Brave words from dead meat," Thexvor said. "I almost respect that, almost." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Oh, human, your transport ship fought well before we destroyed it. Your people died with honor. Too bad honor will not help you in the arena." The guards left, and the door sealed, shut again. Jake slumped against the wall, his mind racing. The transport ship was destroyed. Captain Rodriguez was dead. The colonists who were traveling with him were probably dead too. He was alone, millions of miles from Earth, about to be forced to fight alien monsters for entertainment. "The Vorthak enjoy breaking new prisoners," Zexai said quietly. "Do not let them see your pain." "I'm fine," Jake lied. "No, you are not. None of us are, but we survive anyway. That is all we can do." Jake closed his eyes and tried to think. He was a Marine. Marines adapt and overcome. There had to be a way to turn this situation around. He just had to find it. The ship's engines hummed through the metal walls. Soon they would reach the arena. Soon he would have to fight for his life against creatures that could probably tear him apart without trying. But Jake Morrison wasn't ready to die yet. Not by a long shot. The arena station was bigger than any building Jake had ever seen. From his cell window he could see massive towers stretching up into space and enormous docking bays filled with ships from dozens of different worlds. The place buzzed with activity, as aliens of every shape and size moved around like ants. Jake had been on the station for 3 days now. The guards gave him basic food that tasted like cardboard and water that smelled funny. They also gave him a small room with a hard bed and a toilet that he wasn't sure how to use properly. But he was alive, and that was something. Today was his first fight. "Human!" Commander Thexvor's voice echoed down the hallway. "Time to die." The cell door opened and 4 guards came in. They were all carrying shock sticks that crackled with blue electricity. Jake had learned not to argue with those sticks after his first day here. "Move," one guard said, poking Jake in the back with his weapon. They walked through long corridors filled with the sounds of alien voices. Jake could hear the crowd already. Thousands of creatures cheering and screaming, for blood. His blood, most likely. They stopped at a large metal door. Above it, words in alien writing glowed red. Jake couldn't read them, but he could guess what they said. Something like, "Fighters enter here," or "Abandon hope." "This is the weapons room," Thexvor said. "Pick what you want to die with." The room was full of weapons from many different worlds. Some Jake recognized: swords, axes, hammers. Others looked alien and dangerous. There were energy weapons that hummed with power and blades that seemed to cut the air itself. Jake walked slowly around the room. His marine training had taught him about many weapons, but most of these were designed for creatures much larger and stronger than humans. He needed something that would work with his size and speed, not against them. He picked up a simple metal sword. It was shorter than most of the others and felt good in his hand. The weight was right. He also took a small round shield made of some kind of tough metal. "That is all." Thexvor laughed. "No armor? No energy weapons? You truly are eager to die." "These will do," Jake said. The commander shook his head. "Your opponent is Krexin the Bone Crusher. He has won 15 fights. He likes to pull his enemies apart piece by piece. The crowd loves to watch him work." Jake said nothing. He was trying to stay calm and think like a Marine. Study the enemy, find their weaknesses, use your strengths. They led him to another door. Through the bars in this one, Jake could see the arena. It was huge. Sand covered the floor and high. Walls surrounded it. Above the walls, thousands of aliens sat in seats that went up and up until Jake couldn't see the top. The noise was incredible. Ladies and creatures of all species. A voice boomed over the crowd noise. Today we have special entertainment. A new fighter from the weak world called Earth. The human thinks he can survive in our arena. The crowd erupted in laughter and jeers. Jake could hear voices in dozens of different languages, but the meaning was clear. They thought this would be funny. His opponent needs no introduction. The winner of 15 consecutive battles. The creature who has never shown mercy. Krexan the Bone Crusher. The crowd went wild. The noise was so loud it hurt Jake's ears. The door in front of him opened. Jake stepped out onto the sand. The arena was even bigger than it looked from the door. The sand was hot under his feet, and mixed with dark stains that were probably old blood. Across the arena, another door opened. What came out made Jake's stomach turn cold. Krexan was 8 feet tall and built like a nightmare. His body was covered in black armor that looked like insect shell. He had 4 arms, each ending in claws that were longer than Jake's fingers. His head was triangular with compound eyes that reflected the arena lights like mirrors. When he moved, Jake could hear his claws clicking on the sand. The creature saw Jake and made a sound like grinding metal. Laughter, Jake realized. It was laughing at him. Look at this tiny thing. Krexan's voice was like nails on a chalkboard. Is this some kind of joke? Where is my real opponent? The crowd loved it. They were laughing and pointing at Jake like he was the funniest thing they had ever seen. Jake ignored them all. He was studying Krexan's movement. The creature was big and strong, but it moved like something that had never needed to be careful. It was used to winning through pure power. That could be useful. Begin, the announcer shouted. Krexan charged straight at Jake with all 4 arms spread wide. The creature was fast for its size, but Jake was faster. He dove to the side just as the claws swept through the space where his head had been. The crowd booed. They wanted to see blood, not dodging. Krexan spun around quicker than Jake expected. 2 of its arms swung down at him. Jake raised his shield and felt the impact run through his entire body. The creature was incredibly strong. Stand still and die properly, Krexan hissed. Jake rolled backward and came up in a crouch. He needed to think. The creature had 4 arms, natural armor, and claws that could probably cut through steel. But it was also arrogant and used to easy victories. Krexan charged again. This time Jake didn't dodge completely. He moved just enough to avoid the claws, then swung his sword at one of the creature's arms. The blade bit deep, cutting through the armor and into flesh underneath. Black blood sprayed across the sand. Krexan screamed in pain and rage. The crowd went quiet for a moment. Then they started cheering louder than before. You will pay for that, Krexan snarled. But now the creature was angry, and angry fighters made mistakes. Jake had learned that in combat training. Use the enemy's emotions against them. Krexan attacked wildly, swinging all 4 arms without thinking. Jake ducked and weaved, letting the creature tire itself out. Each swing was powerful enough to kill him, but they were also wild and uncontrolled. Jake waited for his moment. When Krexan overextended with a particularly vicious swing, Jake stepped inside the creature's reach. His sword found the gap between armor plates at Krexan's throat. The creature's eyes went wide with surprise. Black blood bubbled from its mouth. It tried to speak, but only made gurgling sounds. Jake twisted the blade and pulled it free. Krexan fell backward onto the sand and didn't move again. The arena was completely silent. Thousands of aliens stared down at the small human standing over their champion fighter. Then someone started clapping. Others joined in. Soon the entire crowd was on their feet, cheering and shouting. Jake looked up at them and raised his sword. He was still alive. That was what mattered. But as he walked toward the exit, he could see the Vorthak guards talking among themselves. Their expressions weren't happy. They had expected him to die quickly and provide a few minutes of entertainment. Instead, he had won, and that was going to make things much more complicated. 3 weeks had passed since Jake killed Krexin. The small human had fought 6 more times and won every match. The arena crowds now cheered when they announced his name. Some aliens even wore crude masks made to look like human faces. Jake had become famous, and he hated every minute of it. His cell was bigger now. Winners got better treatment, real food instead of the gray paste, a soft bed instead of a metal slab, even a small window that looked out over the station. But it was still a prison, and Jake was still a slave. "You have changed," HFY said during their daily exercise time. The Vorthak let long-term fighters train together in a large room with weights and practice weapons. It kept them in shape for future fights. "How do you mean?" Jake asked. He was doing push-ups while the reptilian warrior lifted massive stone blocks. "When you first came here, you looked like prey, scared, confused. Now you move like a predator. The guards have noticed too." Jake finished his set and sat up. HFY was right. The constant fighting had changed him. Every day he woke up knowing he might have to kill or be killed. It did things to your mind. "The crowd loves you," said Quillen. The crystal being was practicing with a weapon that looked like a glowing staff. "They chant your name. Some call you the Human Storm." "Great," Jake said without enthusiasm. "I always wanted to be a celebrity." "Do not mock it," HFY warned. "Popular fighters live longer. The crowd wants to see their favorites again and again. It makes the owners money." Jake had learned a lot about the arena system in the past 3 weeks. Fighters who survived many battles could eventually earn their freedom, but the number kept changing. Some said 50 wins, others said 100. The truth was that the Vorthak never let anyone go if they were still making money. "Has anyone ever actually been freed?" Jake asked. The training room went quiet. The other fighters stopped what they were doing and looked at each other. "There was one," said an alien that looked like a walking tree with 4 legs. "Vornash, the Unstoppable. He won 97 fights over 5 years. The crowds loved him more than any fighter in history." "What happened to him?" "The owner said he had earned freedom. There was a big ceremony. They gave him a ship and supplies, but..." "But what?" HFY answered. "Ships have tracking devices. The Vorthak followed him to a remote planet and killed him there. No witnesses, no questions. They said space pirates did it." Jake felt his stomach turn cold. Even if he won every fight, even if he became the greatest gladiator in history, they would never really let him go. He was too valuable, and they were too afraid of what freed slaves might do. That night, Jake lay on his bed staring at the ceiling. He was thinking about Earth, about his unit in the Marines, about people he would probably never see again. The thoughts made him angry, and anger was dangerous here. Angry fighters made mistakes, and mistakes got you killed. A soft sound made him sit up. Something was moving in the walls. Jake listened carefully. It sounded like scratching or tapping. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. Jake knew that pattern. Morse code. Someone was sending a message. He got up and pressed his ear to the wall where the sound was coming from. The tapping continued. UMAN. CAN. YOU. HEAR. ME. Jake looked around his cell. There was a metal cup on his small table. He picked it up and tapped back on the wall. ES. WHOARE. YOULISA. CARTER. ENGINEER. FROM. TRANSPORT. SHIP. Jake almost dropped the cup. Someone else from his ship had survived. He tapped back quickly. JAKE. MORRISON. MARINE. HOW. ARE. YOU. ALIVE. THEY. ENGINEERS. IFIX. ARENA. SYSTEMS. KEEP. QUIET. THEY. WATCH. Over the next several nights, Lisa told Jake her story through the walls. She had been working in the engine room when the ship was attacked. The Vorthak had captured several crew members alive. Most were sold as slaves to other worlds, but Lisa's engineering skills made her valuable. They forced her to maintain the arena's technical systems. She had access to maintenance tunnels throughout the station. She could move around without being watched as closely as the fighters, but she was still a prisoner, and escape seemed impossible. HATDOYOU KNOW ABOUT THE STATION. Jake tapped BIG TOURNAMENT COMING ALL BEST FIGHTERS THEY WANTYOU DEAD. Jake wasn't surprised. His victories were making the Vorthak look bad. They had spent weeks telling everyone that humans were weak and pathetic. Now a human was beating their best fighters and the crowds loved him for it. HOWMANYHUMANS. HERE? He asked. FIFTESLAVERSINLEVELSTHESTEREBOUTYOU. That gave Jake an idea, but he needed to think about it more. For now, he just needed to stay alive and keep winning fights. His next opponent was Morgax the Stone Crusher, a creature that looked like a walking boulder with arms. The thing was 12 feet tall and covered in rock-hard skin. Its fists could punch through solid metal. But Jake had learned that size and strength weren't everything. Morgax was slow and predictable. The creature relied on power attacks that took time to build up. Jake spent the entire fight moving, staying just out of reach and letting his opponent wear itself out trying to catch him. When Morgax finally stumbled from exhaustion, Jake was ready. He had noticed loose stones in the arena wall during previous fights. While Morgax caught its breath, Jake pried one free and hurled it at the creature's head with all his strength. The stone hit perfectly, right in what Jake hoped was Morgax's eye. The creature roared in pain and blindly charged toward the sound. Jake stepped aside and watched as Morgax crashed headfirst into the arena wall at full speed. The impact was tremendous. Cracks appeared in both the wall and Morgax's skull. The creature fell forward and didn't get up. The crowd went wild. They had never seen a fighter use the arena itself as a weapon. Jake raised his arms and played to the audience. But inside, he was planning. Every fight taught him something new about the arena, about his enemies, and about what he was capable of. 2 days later, he faced Veltar the Lightning Fast, a creature that moved so quickly it was hard to see. But Jake had been watching Veltar's previous fights. The creature was fast, but it always attacked from the same angles. It had patterns, and patterns could be predicted. Jake won that fight too, and the crowd's cheers were deafening. That night, Lisa's message was urgent. TOURNAMENT STARTS SOON THREE DAYS THEY HAVE SPECIAL PLANS FOR YOU. Jake tapped back. WHAT KIND OF PLANS THEIR GREATEST CHAMPION NEVER LOST A FIGHT DRAKKOR THE UNDEFEATED. Jake stared at the wall for a long time before tapping his response. IWILLBEREADY. The tournament announcement came with great fanfare. Banners hung from every wall of the arena station. Alien merchants set up shops selling food and souvenirs. Ships arrived daily, bringing spectators from across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to see the Grand Championship fights. Jake had won 12 straight matches now. His cell had been moved to the Champion's Wing, a slightly better prison with actual furniture and decent food, but the guards watched him more closely than ever. They knew he was dangerous. Human. Commander Thexvor appeared at Jake's cell door with 4 heavily armed guards. "You have a visitor." They led Jake through corridors he had never seen before. The walls here were decorated with expensive art and precious metals. This was where the important Vorthak lived and worked. The room they brought him to was huge and luxurious. A massive alien sat behind a desk made from what looked like polished bone. This creature was different from the others Jake had seen. Older, more scars, eyes that held intelligence and cruelty in equal measure. "So," the alien said in perfect English, "you are the famous human fighter." "And you are?" Jake asked. "High Commander Morthek, Supreme Arena Master of this station. I have been watching your fights with great interest." The High Commander stood up. He was even bigger than Thexvor, easily 9 feet tall with muscles that bulged under his ceremonial armor. When he moved, Jake could hear the servos and cybernetic implants whirring softly. "You have caused quite a stir, little human. The crowds love you. They chant your name. They buy merchandise with your picture on it. You have made my arena very profitable." "Happy to help," Jake said dryly. Morthek laughed, but it was not a pleasant sound. "I like your spirit. It will make your death all the more entertaining. You seem pretty confident I'm going to die." "Oh, I am certain of it. You see, your winning streak ends tomorrow. You will face Dracacor the Undefeated in the tournament's main event. It will be the most watched fight in arena history." The High Commander walked around his desk and stood directly in front of Jake. Even with 4 guards in the room, Jake felt the urge to attack, but that would be suicide, and dead Marines couldn't complete their missions. "Let me tell you about Dracacor," Morthek continued. "He has fought in arenas across 50 worlds, 237 victories, 0 defeats. He has killed champions from every major species in the galaxy." "Sounds tough." "Tough?" Morthek's eyes gleamed. "Dracacor is not just tough. He is enhanced. Cybernetic limbs that can crush steel. Armor plating fused to his bones. Reflexes boosted by the finest military drugs. Speed, strength, and endurance beyond any natural creature." Jake kept his face blank, but inside his mind was racing. A cybernetically enhanced opponent would be unlike anything he had faced so far. All his previous victories had come from exploiting natural weaknesses, but machines could be harder to predict. "The best part," Morthek said with obvious pleasure, "is that Dracacor specifically requested to fight you. He has heard about the weak little human who thinks he is a warrior. He finds it insulting." "Why insulting?" "Because you are proving that the great Vorthak Empire can be beaten by inferior species. You are making us look weak in front of the entire galaxy. That cannot be allowed to continue." The High Commander walked back to his desk and picked up a small device. When he pressed a button, a holographic image appeared in the air. It showed a creature that made Jake's blood run cold. Dracacor stood 11 feet tall. His body was a mixture of flesh and metal that looked like a walking tank. 4 arms ended in hands that had been replaced with weapons. His head was covered in armor plating with glowing red eyes. Tubes and wires ran across his skin, pumping chemicals and data into his system. "Beautiful, isn't he?" Morthek said. "A perfect fusion of biology and technology, the ultimate fighting machine." Jake studied the image carefully. There had to be weaknesses. Everything had weaknesses. But looking at Dracacor, he wasn't sure what they might be. "I have placed a very large bet against you," the High Commander continued, "as have most of the noble families on this station. We stand to make enormous profits when you die tomorrow." "What if I win?" Morthek laughed so hard he had to wipe tears from his eyes. "Win? You cannot be serious. Look at yourself, human. You are small, weak, fragile. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhancements. You are exactly what evolution discarded when it created superior species like mine. Yet I've won 12 fights. Luck." Morthek waved dismissively. "And poor opponents. You have faced creatures who underestimated you. Dracacor makes no such mistakes. He studies his enemies. He knows every technique you have used in previous fights. He has prepared specifically to counter your tactics." The hologram changed to show recordings of Jake's previous matches. Someone had been analyzing every move he made, every strategy he used. Dracacor would know exactly what to expect. "Even your own species would bet against you," Morthek said with malicious glee. "I have reports from human colonies throughout this sector. When they hear about your fights, they shake their heads in shame. A human pretending to be a warrior? It is embarrassing to them. Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he forced it down. Anger was what they wanted. Angry fighters made mistakes. The tournament begins in 2 hours, Morthek said. You will have several preliminary fights to warm up the crowd. Easy opponents to make you feel confident. Then when the audience is fully invested in your story, Drekakor will tear you apart piece by piece. Sounds like you have it all figured out. I do indeed. The crowds will gasp as their beloved human hero dies screaming. It will be a lesson to every inferior species watching. This is what happens when you challenge the Vorthak Empire. The guards escorted Jake back to his cell. Along the way, he could see other prisoners being prepared for the tournament. Some looked confident, others looked terrified. All of them looked stronger and more dangerous than any human. Back in his cell, Jake lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling. In a few hours, he would face the most dangerous opponent of his life, an enhanced killing machine designed specifically to destroy him. That night, Lisa's message came through the walls. R-E-Y-O-U. R-E-A-D-Y. Jake picked up his cup and tapped back slowly. N-O-B-U-T-I-W-I-L-L-F-I-G-H-T-A-N-Y-W-A-Y-H-A-V-E-I-N-F-O B-O-U-T-D-R-A-K-K-O-R-H-I-S-E-N-H-A-N-C-M-E-N-T-S H-A-V-E W-E-A-K-N-E-S-S-E-S. Jake sat up quickly and pressed his ear to the wall. T-E-L-L-M-E-C-Y-B-E-R-N-E-T-I-C-S N-E-E-D P-O-W-E-R-O-V-E-R-H-E-A-T-I-F P-U-S-H-E-D-T-O-O-H-A-R-D. That was something. If Jake could force Drekakor to use his enhancements at maximum power for long enough, they might overload. But that meant surviving long enough for it to happen. LSO. The message continued. H-E-H-A-S-P-R-I-D-E-L-I-K-E-S-T-O-S-H-O-W-O-F-F-M-A-K-E-H-I-M. Jake smiled grimly, pride and anger. Those were human weaknesses too, but they were also tools that could be used against an enemy. T-H-A-N-K-Y-O-U, he tapped back. G-O-O-D-L-U-C-K, J-A-K-E, M-A-K-E, T-H-E-M-P-A-Y. Jake put down the cup and began planning. Tomorrow he would face the ultimate test. A killing machine designed to destroy him in front of the largest audience in arena history. But Jake Morrison was a Marine, and Marines didn't give up. They found a way to win, no matter what the odds. He was going to need every trick he had learned, every lesson from his training, and probably some luck too. But he was still alive, and as long as he was alive, he could fight. The roar of the crowd was unlike anything Jake had ever heard. Over 100,000 aliens packed the massive arena, and millions more watched on screens across the galaxy. The tournament had been building to this moment for hours, and now the main event was about to begin. Jake stood in the weapons room, but this time he barely looked at the display. He took the same simple sword and shield he always used. Some fighters believed in fancy weapons, but Jake had learned that skill mattered more than equipment. Last meal for the human, Commander Thexvor said with obvious glee. I almost feel sorry for you. Almost. Jake ignored him. He was focused on staying calm and thinking clearly. Lisa's information about Drakkor's cybernetic weaknesses was useful, but it wouldn't matter if he died in the first 30 seconds. The preliminary fights had gone exactly as High Commander Morthek predicted. Jake had faced 3 opponents, all significantly weaker than his usual challenges. The crowd had cheered as he won each match easily. They wanted their human hero to feel confident before the slaughter. Now came the real test. Ladies and creatures, from across the galaxy, the announcer's voice boomed over the arena speakers. The moment you have all been waiting for. The human known as the Storm faces our greatest champion in a battle that will be remembered forever. The crowd erupted. Jake could see aliens of every species on their feet, screaming and waving banners. Some supported him, but most were here to watch him die. Introducing first, with 12 consecutive victories, the small but deadly fighter, from the primitive world Earth. Jake Morrison. The door opened and Jake walked onto the sand. The noise was overwhelming. He raised his sword to acknowledge the crowd, then focused on the opposite door. That was where death would come from. And now the creature who has never known defeat, winner of 237 battles, enhanced beyond the limits of natural evolution, the unstoppable Drak-Kor. The opposite door opened and Drak-Kor stepped into the arena. Even knowing what to expect, Jake felt his courage waver. The creature was a nightmare made real, 11 feet of metal and flesh designed for killing. His forearms ended in weapons instead of hands. Energy cannons, metal claws, and blades that hummed with power. His red eyes locked onto Jake immediately. So, Drak-Kor's voice was amplified by speakers built into his throat. "This is the famous human. You look even weaker than I expected." Jake said nothing. He was studying his opponent's movement, looking for any sign of weakness. But Drak-Kor moved, with perfect mechanical precision. "I have studied every fight you have won," Drak-Kor continued as he slowly approached. "Primitive tactics. Lucky strikes. You succeeded only because your opponents were fools who underestimated you." The crowd was eating it up. They loved the verbal sparring almost as much as the physical combat. "I do not underestimate anyone," Drak-Kor said. "I simply destroy them efficiently." "Begin," the announcer shouted. Drak-Kor didn't charge like Jake's previous opponents. Instead, he raised one arm and fired his energy cannon. Jake dove to the side as a bolt of blue plasma scorched the sand where he had been standing. Another shot. Jake rolled behind a piece of broken stone left over from earlier fights. The energy blast turned the stone to dust and nearly took his head off. Drak-Kor was using his ranged weapons to pin Jake down while closing the distance. Smart tactics. Jake couldn't get close enough to use his sword if he was constantly dodging energy blasts. Jake sprinted across the arena, using every bit of cover he could find. The crowd was cheering every near miss. They wanted to see him struggle before he died. When Jake finally had to come out in the open, Drak-Kor was waiting. The enhanced warrior swung one of his blade arms in a wide arc. Jake ducked under it and slashed at Drak-Kor's leg with his sword. The blade struck cybernetic armor and bounced off without leaving a scratch. Drak-Kor's backhand caught Jake across the chest and sent him flying. He hit the arena wall hard and tasted blood in his mouth. "Disappointing," Drak-Kor said. "I expected more entertainment from the famous human storm." Jake rolled to his feet just as metal claws scraped the wall where his head had been. He was faster than Drak-Kor, but not by much, and the creature's reach was enormous. For the next several minutes, Jake fought the most desperate battle of his life. Drak-Kor was everything the Vorthak had promised. Faster than should be possible for something his size, stronger than any living creature. Weapons that could punch through solid metal. Jake used every trick he knew. He threw sand in Drak-Kor's sensors. He used the arena walls and obstacles to break up attack patterns. He even managed to land several good hits with his sword, but none penetrated the creature's armor. Meanwhile, Drak-Kor was toying with him. The enhanced warrior could have ended the fight at any time, but he was enjoying the show. He landed dozens of minor hits that drew blood but didn't kill. He wanted Jake to suffer. "Your species is pathetic," Drak-Kor said as he casually blocked Jake's desperate sword thrust. "Weak, slow, fragile. You should never have left your primitive world." Jake was breathing hard and bleeding from a dozen cuts. His sword arm was getting tired, and his reflexes were slowing down. At this rate, Drak-Kor would wear him down and finish him off whenever he got bored. But then Drak-Kor made a mistake. He got overconfident. "I have been to your Earth," the enhanced warrior said as he pressed his attack. "Beautiful blue world, so many humans to harvest. My people have plans for your species." Jake's blood went cold. "What plans?" "Slavery, mostly. Your females will breed with whatever species can tolerate them. Your males will work in our mines until they die. Your children..." Drak-Kor paused to slash at Jake's head with metal claws. "Your children will be raised as pets for noble families." Something changed in Jake's mind. The careful, tactical thinking that had kept him alive suddenly gave way to something much older and more dangerous. A rage that came from millions of years of human evolution. the fury of a species that had fought its way to the top of the food chain on a world full of predators. And the best part, Dracocor continued, not noticing the change in his opponent, is that every human in the galaxy will watch you die. They will know that their greatest champion was nothing but a weak insect. Jake stopped dodging. He stopped being careful. He stopped thinking like a soldier and started thinking like what humans really were underneath all their civilization. Apex predators. Jake roared and threw himself at Dracocor with no regard for his own safety. The enhanced warrior was surprised by the sudden change in tactics. His energy cannon missed as Jake got inside his reach. Jake's sword found a gap between armor plates and bit deep into cybernetic muscle. Black fluid sprayed across the sand. Dracocor screamed in pain and anger. "Impossible," the creature snarled. But Jake wasn't done. His fury had taken complete control now. He fought with his sword, his shield, his fists, even his teeth when he got close enough. Every dirty trick he had ever learned. Every bit of violence that human civilization tried to keep buried. Dracocor's enhanced reflexes were fast, but Jake's rage-fueled attacks were completely unpredictable. The creature had studied Jake's previous fights, but this wasn't the same fighter. This was something primal and terrifying. Jake tore out cables and wires wherever he could find them. He smashed sensors with his shield. He used broken pieces of Dracocor's own weapons against him. When his sword broke against cybernetic armor, Jake picked up sharp pieces of metal from the arena floor. The crowd had gone silent. They were watching something they had never seen before. A small, weak creature systematically destroying their ultimate champion through pure, unstoppable fury. Dracocor tried to retreat, but Jake followed him across the arena like death itself. The enhanced warrior's systems were overheating just as Lisa had predicted. Warning lights flashed across his armor as his cybernetics struggled to keep up with maximum combat output. "Stay back!" Dracocor fired his energy cannon wildly. "You are just human!" Jake caught the creature's weapon arm, and in a display of strength that shocked everyone watching, tore it completely off. Sparks and fluid sprayed everywhere as Dracocor collapsed to one knee. The arena was completely silent now. 100,000 aliens stared in disbelief as the small human stood over their fallen champion. Jake looked up at the crowd, his face covered in blood and his eyes still burning with fury. He raised the severed cybernetic arm above his head like a trophy. Then he spoke, and his voice carried clearly across the silent arena. "We are human." The silence in the arena lasted for nearly a minute. 100,000 aliens stared at the impossible scene before them. Their greatest champion lay dead in the sand, torn apart by a creature they had dismissed as weak and primitive. Jake stood over Dracocor's body, still holding the severed cybernetic arm. Blood covered his face and arms. His breathing was heavy but controlled. The killing rage was fading, replaced by cold calculation. Finally, someone in the crowd started clapping slowly. Others joined in. Soon the entire arena was on its feet, cheering for the human who had done the impossible. But Jake wasn't looking at the crowd. His eyes were fixed on the luxury boxes where the Vorthak nobles sat. He could see High Commander Morthek's face clearly, even from this distance. The alien looked like he had seen a ghost. "Winner, Jake Morrison," the announcer's voice cracked with disbelief. Jake raised his arms to acknowledge the crowd, but he was already planning his next moves. The fight was over, but the war was just beginning. Guards surrounded Jake as he left the arena, more guards than usual. They were nervous, and nervous guards made mistakes. Jake filed that information away for later use. Back in his cell, Jake cleaned his wounds and waited. He knew the Vorthak wouldn't honor any promise of freedom. They couldn't afford to let him live after what he had shown the galaxy. A human had beaten their ultimate champion. That made every human a potential threat. The attack came 3 hours later. Jake heard the footsteps in the corridor before they reached his door, too many guards for a normal escort. He positioned himself beside the door and waited. When they entered, Jake was ready. The first guard through the door took Jake's elbow to the throat and went down choking. The second guard raised his shock stick, but Jake grabbed his wrist and snapped it. The weapon clattered to the floor, "Kill him," Commander Thexivor shouted from the hallway. "Kill the human now." But Jake was no longer the confused prisoner they had captured weeks ago. He was a weapon forged in blood and pain, and he was done being their entertainment. Jake fought his way into the corridor, using the narrow space to prevent the guards from surrounding him. His bare hands were just as deadly as any weapon now. Every strike was precise and brutal. More guards arrived, but they were facing something they had never encountered before. A human pushed beyond all limits, fighting not just for his own life but for the survival of his entire species. The corridor filled with the sounds of battle. Aliens screamed orders in their own language, while Jake moved through them like a force of nature. He broke bones, tore weapons away, and used every dirty trick warfare had ever taught him. But there were too many of them. Eventually, weight of numbers would bring him down. Jake needed help, and he knew where to find it. A shock stick caught him across the ribs, sending electricity through his body. Jake grabbed the weapon and its wielder, using both as a club to clear space around himself. Then he ran. The maintenance tunnels Lisa had told him about were his destination. If he could reach them, he could move through the station without being tracked. And if he was very lucky, he could find the other human prisoners. Jake smashed through a wall panel and squeezed into the narrow space beyond. Emergency lights cast everything in red shadows. Behind him, he could hear Thexivor screaming orders to seal off the tunnels. The maintenance system was a maze of pipes, cables, and cramped passages. But Jake had memorized Lisa's descriptions during their secret conversations. He knew where he was going. He found Lisa in a technical room filled with computer screens and control panels. She was small and thin with short brown hair and tired eyes. When she saw Jake covered in blood, she nearly screamed before recognizing him. "Jake, what happened? I heard alarms everywhere." "They tried to kill me. The fight was supposed to end with my death, remember? When I won instead, they decided to handle the problem directly." Lisa's hands flew over her control panels. "The entire station is in lockdown. They're sealing every exit and checking every room. Can you access the prisoner levels?" "Some of them." "Why?" "Because we're not escaping alone. Every human on this station comes with us." Lisa stared at him. "That's impossible. There are 15 humans here scattered across different levels. Most are in the slave quarters. We'll never reach them all." "We don't have to reach them. We just have to give them the chance to reach us." Jake pointed at Lisa's control panels. "Can you override the cell locks?" "On some levels, yes, but the moment I do that, they'll know exactly where we are." "Good. I want them to know." Jake's plan was simple but dangerous. Lisa would unlock every cell on the station at the same time. In the chaos that followed, the human prisoners would fight their way to predetermined rally points. From there, they would take control of the docking bays and steal ships. It was a desperate plan with almost no chance of success. But it was better than waiting to die. "Are you sure about this?" Lisa asked as her fingers hovered over the controls. "Do it." Lisa pressed the button. Immediately, alarms began wailing throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed in every corridor. Computer screens displayed warnings in dozens of alien languages. "Every cell on the station just opened," Lisa said, watching her monitors. "Thousands of prisoners are loose." The effect was immediate and devastating. The arena station had never dealt with a full-scale prison break before. Guards who had been hunting for Jake suddenly found themselves fighting desperate aliens of every species. The corridors became war zones, but Jake wasn't interested in the general chaos. He was focused on finding the other humans. Lisa guided him through the maintenance tunnels to the slave quarters. Here they found 12 humans huddled in a storage room, men and women from various colonies, all captured during Vorthak raids. They looked at Jake with mixtures of hope and disbelief. "Are you really him?" asked an older man with graying hair. "The fighter from the arena? I'm Jake Morrison, Earth Defense Marines, and we're getting out of here." The group included a ship engineer named Bob Harris, a colonial militia officer named Rachel Torres, and a teenager named Danny Kim whose entire family had been killed in a raid. They were tired and scared, but they were also angry. And angry humans were dangerous. The Hiao docking bay is 3 levels up. Lisa said, checking her portable scanner. But it's heavily guarded. Then we go through the guards, Jake said simply. The battle for the docking bay was brief but vicious. The Vorthak guards were trained soldiers, but they were fighting humans who had nothing left to lose. Jake led the assault with the tactical skills of a Marine and the fury of someone who had seen his people enslaved. When the smoke cleared, they had captured 3 small ships. Not much against an entire space station, but enough to get them away from immediate danger. Where do we go now? Rachel asked as they prepared for launch. Jake was already planning ahead. First, we find more humans. Every colony, every ship, every prison. Then we show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity. The ships launched just as High Commander Morthek's forces regained control of the station. But it was too late. The humans were already broadcasting their escape across every communication channel they could access. Jake's final message went out on the same frequency the arena had used to show his fights to the galaxy. This is Jake Morrison speaking to every human in known space. The Vorthak think we are weak. They think we are slaves. They are wrong. We are coming for our people. We are coming for our freedom. And we will show them exactly what humans are capable of when pushed too far. As their small fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Jake looked back at the arena station one last time. The aliens who had captured him thought they were getting easy entertainment. Instead, they had awakened something that would haunt their nightmares for generations to come. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or numbers. It was the simple fact that humans never gave up, never stopped fighting, and never forgot those who wronged them. The Vorthak had wanted to see human fury. Now they would experience it firsthand.